Okay, so I'm going to ask Ian Honeyman, to talk about tender qualifications and the importance of keeping them to a minimum, and perhaps you can tell us a bit about your experience of what it said bidders really understand the process of qualifications and the impact they can have on bids.
Thanks, David. Tender qualifications generally happen because, well, several reasons. One of them is either a question mark over some of the tender documentation that comes out, and contractors, subcontractors tend to want to put in clarification of what they're actually bidding on. The issue that comes up with this a lot of times, particularly in public sector work, is there's a general statement issued with the tender documents which says qualifications will effectively disqualify your tender. And that makes things quite difficult if you do put a qualification in, because generally speaking, you'll either get a letter back saying withdraw it, or withdraw your tender, or your tender will be disqualified. So I think the most important thing about this is, if you do have or question marks or things you want to raise, it's important to raise it during the tender period with the procuring body, whether that's a main contractor or a client body. I think it's important it occurs at that stage, because entering into a contract with something that you know is potentially going to lead to a problem further down the line is not the ideal situation to be in. And at least if you've raised something at tender stage, it may be possible to bring it back to the table later on, but not quite sure it would work that way. As I said, I think the main issue is if it's an issue that's affecting you as a tenderer, it's probably affecting some others. There's two approaches to that. Some people can see that as being an advantage, and I'm not giving away my advantage in this. But generally speaking, if you're raising something like a qualification, it's probably going to end up in a potential discussion or dispute further down the line if you don't deal with it earlier on. So I think the main issue that I've come across is nobody wants to actually discuss it, and that's probably because it's left to the last minute. I think it's important that you raise these things as soon as possible during the process and get clarification from the procuring body to basically get an answer to it, so your tender is more likely to be valid and you're dealing with issues that you know you're pricing.
I think you've raised a really important point there about things being left to the last minute, which is never the best place to deal with these things. In terms of other areas of improvement, for example, if an invitation to tender isn't adequately clear, then a tenderer will probably qualify that tender. So presumably that's an area of improvement where the front end work removes the lack of clarity. Yes, I think it's always important that any documentation comes out that's clear in what it's trying to achieve. And I think it depends to a large extent on the type of job you're doing. I see so many times in jobs where there's consultants are not necessarily going to be employed for projects afterwards. It's when you're dealing with a client direct. That's an important issue, because the client that's operating that kind of thing is not really going to be potentially qualified to make decisions and call that. So it's important to get these things fixed out with the competent person that's dealing with the tenders at that stage. But I think it's all about the bid being correct. And let's face it, there are a lot of errors, a lot of missing information, a lot of information that you could be dealing with or needing up front that isn't necessarily there. And that's why sometimes, particularly you're dealing with some kind of specialist contractors with specialists that have been asked to bring things to the table. That's an important area that they're informing the client that there may be issues that are missing that could end up with a problem with any bid coming from anybody in this whole field. So I think it's an important area to deal with as soon as possible. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier about how a tender qualification could be, could work to a bidder's advantage if they see an opportunity to offer, I don't know, better solution, better value, but essentially it's about pricing what they've been presented. What that when asked to do, yeah. I mean, effectively, if you're going to go down the route of looking at this as an advantage, you're probably going to end up in a potential where you're going to have an argument with the other side, or at least there's a potential that could end up being money being required to be paid. And as soon as money comes into the equation there, that's where things start to get a bit rocky. So it's important that, you know, if you're going to do this, you really need to be upfront with it, in my opinion,
and understand what it is the client's asking for, and understand what it is you're offering, because the two are different in there. There's a recipe for issues further down the line.
Of course, the guide covers all of these kind of points,
It does, yeah.
and we encourage people who are bidding to become very familiar with what the guide is offering by way of clarity around what can be quite a complex issue.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ian.